What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Behind the Glass Sports Podcast. We want to thank you guys for tuning in, whether you're watching via YouTube or if you're going to listen later on in the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your pods. We thank you for tuning in. Brandon Stoll on the other side. I'm Stephen Priest Jr. If you'd like to follow us on Twitter at Brandon_Stoll Brandon, for Brandon rather, and at Stephen Priest Jr. for myself. I just want to say that underscore really just kills me every time. It just kills my momentum, man. We gotta find who Brandon Stoll is on Twitter, and we have to pay him off or put a hit out. I'm just kidding. We're not gonna kill anybody. But like, man, we gotta get that because I get in a nice little rhythm there, and it's Brandon_Stoll for Brandon. It's just too many words. There's too many or like O sounds in there. I just can't deal with it. Anyways, it's probably someone who hasn't tweeted in like 3 years too. I bet you it is. Oh, see? Maybe you can message Twitter. Yeah, maybe you can message Twitter and be like, "Listen, I need this. Is there any way you can just kick this guy off, like, due to, like, inactivity?" Like, either that or we're gonna cyberbully him. No, we're not gonna do that either. I can't promote bullying and killing people on this podcast. We're gonna get booted. Oh, here we go. There goes that $1.45 we just earned in Anchor. It's all gone now. Yeah. Well, I take back everything I said tenfold. So we will not be killing or bullying anyone here. All right. Great start to this podcast. Anyways, back to sports. Training camp starts today. Denver Broncos training camp. So there's that for you. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Today's going to be a little bit of a shorter podcast, so you guys know, but we'll get back to normal here on Tuesday, next Tuesday. But we also got to react to obviously the Nuggets season is coming to a close, the seeding games. That is all important, just so you guys know. If you didn't know this, the seeding games are extremely important. They must play every starter into the ground 48 minutes. If you're one of those guys, we'll get to that as well. The Nuggets obviously lost to the Clippers the last time. They'll finish off with the Raptors today. But with Will Barton and Gary Harris already ruled out, is there really a point to playing the starters? We'll talk about that. Playoff matchups are already determined. The Nuggets will get the Utah Jazz in round one, so we'll go over our predictions and that matchup a little bit there. But obviously, the Clippers game, the Nuggets had a chance to win that game as well, but Malone pulled the starters. I just want you to know, Michael Malone. Speaking of hits, he might have some dirty things coming his way from betters. From that Lakers game and that Clippers game. I'm sure these whoever gambles on those games were not happy with Michael Malone keeping the starters out the past two games. But did he before the Lakers game? No, the Lakers before the Lakers game was the Utah game, wasn't it? Thought it was the double overtime game. At least I thought it was. I'm pretty sure it was. I don't know about that. I think there was I think there was 2 reasons they did it. I don't think it has anything to do with, like, they didn't wanna give anything away. I think it's 1, I think Michael Malone truly wanted to rest guys, and 2, they I'm not gonna say that they're scared of the Mavs because I think that's been floated out there. Just because they had a preferred matchup, it seems like they're scared of the Mavericks. I don't think they're scared of the Mavericks. I just think they'd rather not play the Mavericks because they know it's not a good matchup. Doesn't mean they're scared. If they had to play them, they'll play them, and they'll play them, as hard as they can and let the chips fall where they may. But at the same time, like they did last year with Houston, they didn't want to play Houston. So what did they do? They manipulated the games a little bit. And oh, San Antonio was a better matchup. And I hate when people say, and we had this argument at the station yesterday with multiple people, oh, it didn't work last year for the Nuggets. They lost. Well, it did work because the goal was to avoid Houston. Did they avoid Houston? Yes, that was the goal. Did they win in the first round? Yes, that was the goal. The Nuggets' first time in the playoffs with that core, you know? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like 11 to 12,000 times. It seems like he's always the one seed. You like my number there? No, I can't remember. Well, and can we stop acting to right. And that's what goes into my point here. Can we please stop acting like the Dallas Mavericks are this bad team? Oh, they're a 7th seed. They're 43 and 22. You want to know what the Oklahoma City Thunder are at seed 4? 44 and 27. So they're one win behind the Thunder. They're 3 wins behind the Nuggets, who are the 3 seed. 5 behind the LA Clippers, who are the 2 seed. The Dallas Mavericks, they're not the 7 seed in the East, which is the Brooklyn Nets that are 35 and 37. Okay, this is a good basketball team with a top 10 player at his position, with Kristaps Porzingis, who's looking like he's entering back into a top 20, top 15 player discussion with how he's playing. And that whole team is surrounded by shooters around those two guys. Exactly. Who's just a freak. Boban is? Oh my god, don't scare me like that. I mean, he could. I mean, he doesn't even have to jump to dunk, okay? So that just tells you everything you need to know. Their record won't tell you that, but the injuries that they face throughout the season should account for that because if you look at their team now, that's a team nobody wants to play right now. Yeah. Arguably, yeah. You could make an argument that every team in the West right now could be a top 5 seed. In the East, yes. I mean, look at all these teams. They're all stacked. Even Utah. they're missing their second leading scorer, who's a 20-point per game guy, and they're 44 and 27, or excuse me, 28. Houston, we know what Houston brings. Mhm. Yep. Yeah, he's nuts. Yeah. Ugh, really? I haven't watched much of Ayton. I love that. Mhm. Well, you have to factor in Golden State too. Like, well, I mean, each team in the West. I mean, Minnesota has a formidable duo in, D'Angelo and Cat. Obviously, New Orleans with, Brandon Ingram and Drew Holiday as the best players there. Um, then you have San Antonio, Memphis, Alonzo as well. Josh Hart, solid off the bench. They have good players out there. I guess if you want to throw in Zion as like a 12th man, when he's not 576 pounds, yeah, you could throw him in there too as well. I need to stop disrespecting Zion. It's becoming this hate thing, and it's really unhealthy for me. I don't want to hate the guy, but people make me hate the guy. I don't understand this. I need help. I need to go to therapy for this. I really do. It's not his fault. It's just I get so defensive of LeBron when everybody compares him to LeBron when guys come out. I did this with Andrew Wiggins. I did this with Ben Simmons, and now it's just transferred over to Zion. Can we please, for the love of God, stop comparing people to LeBron when they come out? Because then I have this immense hatred that I have to undo. Golly, I'm sorry, Zion. It's not your fault. It's me. It's really me. Okay, I'm sorry. Regardless, the West is stacked. Next year, when everybody is ideally healthy, how do you squeeze it if you're the bottom tier of those teams? Okay, because obviously the teams we mentioned, I would say probably Memphis is the team that gets booted and replaced for Golden State. I mean, they're in the playoff game. So, or the playing game. I don't know. I mean, you never know what can happen. I mean, listen, Portland almost lost to Brooklyn last night. Okay, so anything can happen. Plus, Ja and Valanciunas just came off of two triple double performances there. So I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. What if Dame has a bad shooting night? Because really, it's all on him. Yeah. Right. All right. That's fair. But regardless, the West is stacked, and honestly, that's why they just need to go to the best 1 through 16 teams. Because the West is so lopsided and stacked. Exactly, but would you rather see, Memphis with what they have and, Phoenix, if they can get to like 40 wins, other than the Orlando Magic, who are 33 and 40 at the eighth seed, or Brooklyn, well, Brooklyn's going to be really good next year. So I want to see Brooklyn. But I mean, they're stacked. I mean, they're stacked. Yeah. You know what? Bold prediction right now: the Brooklyn Nets will be the first seed in the East next year. That's what I'm going with right now. Healthy Kevin Durant. If Kyrie Irving can play at least 50 games with all the talent there, I think they'll I think they'll be the number 1 seed next year, and the Bucks will be too. Exactly. Jared Allen, Joe Harris. I don't know if his contract is up, but Joe Harris. I mean, they have a stacked team. Karis LeVert. I mean, that's a stacked team. That's gonna be a really good team. Yeah. I mean, they're easy a top 3 seed. Maybe they don't get 1 seed because of, like, chemistry and having to figure all that out, but that's a team that come March. Yeah, easily. Well, not easily. I'd probably go 6 or 7, but, I mean, people forget about Kevin Durant, like, he just doesn't exist anymore. Like, do we understand that Kevin Durant, like, still exists? And if he's healthy, I mean, I get it, he's coming off of an Achilles, but it's not like he relied he's not an athleticism player, even though he's a freak athlete. He's not a guy. He's not. I was gonna go Zion. I was gonna see. I was gonna do it again. I was gonna slight Zion. He's not a guy that has to just rely on athleticism like Zion. That's where I was gonna go. He's so skilled, And I mean, even if he loses explosiveness, okay, he's still 7'1" and has like a 12'3" wingspan and can still dunk on you if he needs to. So that's gonna be a crazy team. Regardless, though, I don't know how we got here, but the Nuggets got the matchup they wanted, and it's the Utah Jazz. I don't foresee them playing anybody against the Raptors tonight. I mean, Gary and Will have already been ruled out. Uh, play a half makes sense. Use finger. Wow. Oof. We're really bad on this podcast. My 11 to 12 for me. You got to go finger counting. Ish. Not a good look for us. Yeah. Three, two, two, three, two, three. Yeah. He played both LA games. Yeah. Mhm. Good luck with that. Good luck with that too. Yeah, I mean, 20, maybe a half of play. Listen, I mean, I got a lot of arguments to these guys need to go out there and build chemistry. And it's like, okay, well, you do realize that your two best players, their chemistry has already looked great in 3 games. So that's fine. We don't need that there. Paul Millsap, I think the 3 guys that are the usual starters that have been out there, Paul Millsap, Jamal and Jokic, they're fine. They're good. But you have to realize too, if you establish that chemistry, well, they're still gonna have to reestablish chemistry if and when Gary and Will Barton get back.
Hmm.
So I think it's fine. Plus, we already know that these bench guys are probably gonna have to play a lot. I saw a tweet this morning saying this, and I thought it was a really great point. Malone's been really kind of just pessimistic on Gary and Will, and that could be because these guys aren't going to play at least to start in the playoffs. So there's probably good reason why he's thrown the bench out there and played them a lot, because he wants those guys to get run and get familiar and get their legs under them, because we're probably going to be seeing a lot of PJ Dozier and I don't know if Bol, but obviously Monte, and I don't know if we'll see Keita Bates Diop, but
No.
we're probably going to see those type of guys, Torrey Craig and those type of guys get run. So there's probably good reason for that. I think if they play a half tonight, that's fine. If he plays them a quarter, whatever, I'd be really shocked if he plays or if they play the entire game tonight or today. But it is what it is. Going to the matchup though with the Utah Jazz. Obviously, this was the preferred matchup for the Nuggets, and just because we say it's a favorable or preferred matchup doesn't mean it's going to be an easy matchup. I
No,
think a
they
lot of
literally
people
went to
mistake
double
that.
overtime.
Exactly. I
So,
think a lot of people mistake that. Oh, you want the Jazz, so you think it's just going to be easy, that they're just going to sweep them. No, the exact opposite. I think this game, ideally, in Denver's best case scenario, goes 5. Worst case, it goes 7. But I think right now, my first initial reaction, it probably goes 6. That's just me, and that's me assuming that Gary and Will probably don't play this series.
right.
If they don't play this series, I see it going 6 or 7. But still, at the end of the day, the Nuggets, even without those guys, are the better team on paper. Jokic, MPJ, and Jamal Murray. It's really going to be on those 2 guys. They're going to have big series, big series
A big series.
a big series. There we go. Thank you. I was struggling there. Really, really drowning. Thank you for throwing me that life vest. But they have to play really well in this series, because I think if you're Utah, I'm coming into this. We're doubling Jokic. We're doing everything we can to get the ball out of his hands. We're making everybody else beat us. If Jamal Murray and MPJ and Torrey Craig, Paul Millsap, if they can beat us, so be it. But I'm not going to let Jokic just have his way. That's just me. So I think this matchup is favorable. Obviously, with the Nuggets, 3-point defense is a concern, and Joe Ingles, and I don't think we're gonna get that Donovan Mitchell every single game though. Even though
Uh,
he's got star potential, he's kind of inconsistent in his own right.
well,
You
he
know
was inconsistent in that game. He shot 12 for 33.
exactly, and he just came on late. Okay, and that's the thing. Like whenever the Nuggets play Donovan Mitchell, I'm not gonna say every time he has a bad game, but he doesn't seem to light it up. And I say this, and he'll probably light it up in
Well,
the
that's
series.
where you would want Gary. I
Exactly,
once Mitchell figured out he could just blow by Grant, he was able to get it going.
Tory.
Yeah, sorry. Torrey Craig. Sorry, I was reading Grant's stat line. He played 47 minutes, in that game. But yeah, once he figured out that he could blow by Torrey, he got it going. So that's something that I'm a bit concerned about, is who's really going to guard Donovan Mitchell, because all this talk about well, Gary and Will, they don't really need him right now. They're winning games just fine, and blah blah blah. Offensively, yeah, they don't really need him. I would say they need Will offensively coming off the bench, because they don't really have anyone off the bench that can just come in and score. Monte can't really do that. Bull isn't gonna play enough. Plumlee can't do that, obviously. Jeremy Grant's close, but he's not consistent enough to do that every game. So you don't really have, and PJ's not gonna do that. So you don't really have anyone that can come off the bench and just score, like a Lou Williams type of role, right? Well, Will fits that, and that's why I've always said Will can be really good off the bench. He can be your Lou Williams coming off the bench, because when he comes off the bench, you just tell him, go out and score. You don't have to,
Right.
fit in with Jokic and Jamal, and you don't have to, play, in certain offense. Just go out and score. Go out and, keep the second unit afloat by just being aggressive and running that offense. And so he can do that. So that's where I think they're really gonna miss Barton in that sense. But with Gary, they're not gonna miss his offense, but they do need his defense. They
Yep.
might miss Will's offense, but they can at least kind of get over, and they can kind of just get past the first round without him.
Mm.
With Gary, I'm not sure. I can see a scenario where they lose this series because they don't have Gary. I don't know who's gonna defend Donovan Mitchell, and that's the issue. And I like Torrey. I just don't think he can make it tougher for Mitchell. I just don't think he can do what they need him to do against Donovan Mitchell. And if it's a close game, unlike that double overtime game, I have a feeling he's gonna win it for Utah.
Yeah, I think for the Nuggets there, I don't know. Their best option to guard Donovan is going to be Torrey because at least in that starting
It
lineup,
might be
I
Jamal.
mean,
And I
yeah,
get Jamal gets a lot of crap for his defense, but the way he bulked up and the way I think the seriousness of it that where Jamal is going to, I just have a feeling Jamal's going to step up. And not just offensively, not just being consistent. I just think he's going to step up, and we saw him play in the post
yeah.
against the Clippers. I have a, if I would rather have Jamal at least early on and see what he can do. Put Jamal on Donovan Mitchell early on, and just see if he can stick with him. See if it makes it tough, and then have Jamal and Torrey, when they run a pick and roll, have them switch and have Torrey be the second guy, because I just I don't think Donovan can't. At least I don't think, as long as Jamal is playing hard, I don't think he can just blow by Jamal. If Donovan's hitting tough shots over him, you can't. It doesn't matter who you have out there, right? He's
Hmm.
gonna hit those tough shots. So you don't want him to blow by and get easy buckets. If he's blowing by Torrey and getting in the paint and either creating a shot for someone else or getting a layup, a dunk, whatever, that's the issue. If he's hitting tough shots, you can't do anything about that.
Here's my only concern though with Jamal guarding Donovan is that he's going to have to expend so much energy
Yeah.
on that end
That's where
guarding
Porter comes in.
Donovan, and you really want that on the offensive end. You want him to be aggressive, attacking the basket, and not settling for jumpers. Even though he can hit them, you don't want him settling for that necessarily. My second concern is if they run Donovan through any type of screen and roll action, it's really probably going to be that 1-5, 1-4 action to where it's a big and they want to attack Jokic off of that screen. So with Jamal, sometimes he can get caught on screens
Mm-hmm.
and take a knee into the thigh. It seems like more often than not, Jamal comes up hobbling from a screen. And maybe that was last year, but I would just rather, if anybody, it sounds kind of cruel, but if anybody's gonna, take that hit, I'd rather be Torrey than Jamal. I think Torrey will be fine. I
Sure.
think he has the length, at 6'7", 6'8", whatever he's listed at. I get he's not as speedy, but I think Torrey's going to take that matchup head on. I think Torrey knows that he didn't play well defensively against those guards. I think he's going to do whatever he can to try and slow down because you're not going to stop Donovan. That's the thing. You're not going to stop him. So you just have to find a way to slow him down. I think we're going to see a lot of, if there is screen and roll action, the Nuggets are going to blitz Donovan and get the ball out of his hands, or at least try to, and try and make
Yeah.
a play from there. Now it's scramble defense. Now it's rotating. That's when rotations have to be really sound because they'll kill you if you leave that shooter in the corner. That's when they'll kill you.
But
So
they use that blitz against Damian, and it works, right? We already know the Nuggets historically have played really well against Dame. They've
Mhm.
stopped him. Last year in the postseason, Dame didn't do anything. It was
He's
CJ.
CJ McCollum.
So
Yeah.
they know how to do so, but they had Gary,
Mhm.
and they also had Will, and Will was actually a good defender, and in that scramble defense, he was really good at getting to the corners. And so I think without those two guys, I don't think you can do that because I don't trust MPJ to get back. I trust Tory. I don't trust MPJ. I don't MPJ is good enough to run that scramble defense. So I think you just have to. Here's the thing: they got Donovan Mitchell. They got one guy. They don't have a CJ McCollum for him.
Mm-mm.
So who can at least create their own. They got guys who can sit in the corner and hit threes, but they don't
Yeah.
have another guy who can create his own shot. They lost that. So really, it's gonna take Donovan Mitchell hitting 40 to 50 points a
Yeah.
game in order to beat Denver. Offensively, what Denver needs to do is just make sure you're consistent. You need 20 to 25 from Jokic. You need 20 to 25 from Murray. You need, I would say, 15 to 20 from Porter. If you get those, okay, great. And then off the bench, or even with the other guys, you need Torrey to go in this game against Utah in the double overtime game. He shot 5 for 9, 1 for 2 from 3, had 11 points. You need
Mhm.
that. Paul Millsap needs to be better. He was 1 for 5 in that game. I don't think this is the greatest matchup for Paul Millsap. And also in these 8 games, or at least when he has played, Paul has looked very slow. Um,
Old.
Old. Yeah, he hasn't looked good. So that's something where we need to keep an eye on because if he's still not playing well 2,
Mhm.
3 games in, I think it's time to put in Jeremy Grant in the
Right.
starting lineup. So, those, if we're going to get those averages, the 15 to 20 from Porter, 20 to 25 from Jokic and Murray, the other guys need to step up and at least hit 10 to 15.
Yeah.
If that's Monte, who had 15 against Utah, PJ struggled a little bit, 2 for 6, for only 4 points. Plumlee didn't play well. I mean, he was 2 for 3, 5 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. So those are the guys that need to come in and need to get 8 to 15 points. And if
Yeah.
you're not getting that from the bench, you need to put Bol in. But that's my concern right now is the offense from the bench. Because Jordan Clarkson came on and had 19 points against Denver off the bench. Niang had 9 off the bench, 7 for Bradley. So like they had a couple of guys come off the bench and kill them.
Right.
So that's my concern is they
Mhm.
need Jeremy Grant, they need Monte to have 20 or 15, and maybe even Bobo to come in and hit a couple of threes.
Well, and it's a situation too, I think, where for Utah, it's they need more. It's the ifs with them, right? It's they need more ifs to go their way if Donovan plays well, if Jordan Clarkson can come in
Right.
and give 20, if this guy can, Royce O'Neal or Gobert can somehow find a way to get 20 points. That's kind of what the situation boils down to for Utah. Whereas for Denver, I mean, there's ifs with them, but you're expecting at least 20, from your big three. And maybe it's a situation with the bench too, and that's one thing that I get concerned with as well is where is scoring going to come from? Because once Jokic, Jamal, and MPJ are all on the bench, and you go to that lineup of Monte and it's Jeremy Grant. I get Grant's he's played phenomenal in the bubble, but other than his set shot and getting to the rim, he doesn't really have much of an offensive game outside of that. So when you have that lineup of Monte, Jeremy, Mason, and if it's PJ Dozier and whoever else is out there,
I think that's
where's
your
the
4. I
offense?
think that's the 9-man rotation.
Yeah, where's the consistent offense going to come from? And maybe it's a situation to where Malone has to do more of a staggered minute approach to where, okay, once Jokic and Murray go out, Jamal or MPJ is going to play longer with the second unit.
Yeah.
So that way you have that threat of an offensive production, shot creator at least. Maybe that's something we see. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes. Quickly though, before we wrap today, predictions on the series. How do you see it turning out? What is your gut on it right now? Assuming I'm just assuming that Gary and Will don't play the series, or at least in the first 2 to 3 games.
Yeah, and even if they come back in this series, they're going to be very limited.
Mhm.
And it's going to take them a while to fit in with. Remember, everyone has to fit in with MPJ at this point, right? So
Yeah.
because he hasn't been necessarily playing, at least he hasn't been getting 30 to 40 minutes. So, you know, Will's got to get used to coming off the bench. Gary's got to get used to playing with MPJ in the starting lineup instead of Will.
Mhm.
Um, I think a guy that actually has struggled with Porter has been Millsap offensively. Ever since Porter has been playing, Millsap has really struggled. So I believe in that first scrimmage game where Millsap was playing but Porter wasn't, or maybe the second scrimmage game. One of those games where Porter wasn't back yet. Millsap was playing really well. Ever since Porter has come back in, Millsap has struggled. So
Yeah.
maybe that's something to do with it. I'm not sure, but they need Paul to step up here in the playoffs, which he did last year. So I think if all things go right, the Nuggets should be able to win this in 5. But because of missing Will, I think their bench is gonna lose them a game, maybe 2. I got this one Denver winning in 6. But if Donovan Mitchell gets hot and if Jordan Clarkson gets hot, I think that's probably the X factor for them. If they can get Clarkson to essentially be CJ McCollum for them, this will go 7. Um, Rudy Gobert, I'm not too worried about. Jokic has played really well against Gobert, and he got him fouled out in the last game. He did have 22 against him in double
Yeah, Jokic has to
overtime.
be better defensively against Gobert because in that
Yeah,
first half he did whatever he wanted offensively.
right. But with Jokic on the offensive end too, he can do whatever he wants against Gobert. For whatever reason, Gobert just can't stop Jokic. So I'm not too worried about. I think that's Jokic should win that. But if you want to make it a push, that fine, that's a push. Donovan Mitchell, I mean, it's gonna be him and Clarkson. If those two guys are going off for them, Denver's in trouble. But if not, and they played more so like what they did in that double overtime game where Mitchell was 12 for 33, Clarkson came off the bench and played well, but not great, 6 for 14. He did have 19 points. If it's more like that, Denver should win in 6.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm going with it as well. I agree. Best case scenario, if the Nuggets were fully healthy, I'd say this goes in 5. Um, but with Gary and Will out, I mean, I'd expect we'll see Will at some point in this series, maybe game 2, game 3.
Yeah.
I mean, the series starts on Monday, so you never know. I mean, we could see Will maybe on Monday to start things. Now, obviously, I don't think he'll start. I think he'll get weaned into it, maybe off the bench, which we saw Will get weaned into the playoffs last year, and it was brutal. But at the same time, I think it goes 5. But with this team kind of depleted, losing 2 key starters, I think it's probably likely it goes 6. If it goes 7, man, that's dangerous. You're
Yeah.
you're really playing with some crazy waters there. But I think it goes 6. I think each game's gonna be close. I don't foresee any team blowing the other out necessarily. While both teams could, pull away a little bit, I think both teams have enough talent to at least get it back into, a close game. But I'm gonna go Denver in 6. And we have to get huge. We have to get playoff Jokic. I mean, it's all gonna ride on him first and foremost. We have to get at the bare minimum. He's got to be 25 and 10 and 5.
Yeah.
That's where we got
Here's
to go.
here's my bold prediction with this series. Jamal averages 26 a game.
I think he has to. I think
I,
he
I
has
think
to.
we see a very different Jamal. A
Yeah.
very different. Like we saw flashes in the playoffs where he had, I would say, 3 games in each series where he just went nuts.
Mm-hmm.
I think we get that every game this year.
Yeah. And I think he has to. He has to at the
Yeah.
bare minimum for him. He has to be 22 to 25. If he gets 26, if Jokic gets 25 a night and Jamal gets 26, I don't see how the Nuggets lose this series.
Yeah. And if you get 15 from Porter, because
Yeah.
Porter's in his first playoffs, like, as much as I've said he's in his second year, that's all great and all, but he's in his first playoff series. So he is a
And I
rookie
think
in the
it's
playoffs.
super beneficial for him that it's in the bubble because it's
Yeah.
not in a high intensity environment, like being in front of Pepsi, packed stands, like, oh, you feel the energy, and it's like, oh my god, now I have to produce.
Mhm.
I think for him, there will be a little bit of jitters because it's the playoffs, but I think for him, it'll be easy, and I think for all of these guys, it'll be easier for them to just kind of push that away, like, oh yes, it's the playoffs, but they'll kind of forget it's just basketball. There's no fans
Right.
really.
If
There's
I'm
no momentum
alone,
from the fans.
first 3 plays of the game, it's cut for Porter, dump off, dunk. Every play, the first 3 plays are written for Porter to get a layup.
See,
And
I
that's what I'm doing, because if he can get going,
yeah,
he's going to be dangerous.
I think you could throw those in for sure,
Just
but I
get him
think
comfortable.
the first play, I think every game should be that little for Jokic to bring it up. He passes it away. Someone screens his guy, and he gets to the block, and he goes to work. I think that should be the open every game because he's either going to get fouled, he's going to make the bucket, or he's going to pass it off
Yeah.
for an open three. So I think that's how you should start the game. Either way, both should more likely than not be a bucket, but we'll see how it goes. And Kemp wants to know who our finals prediction is. I think I predicted Bucks Lakers when we did it earlier on a few episodes back. I'm now revising that. I think it's Bucks Clippers to me. I think you had uh,
I had
or no,
Bucks.
I had Celtics Lakers.
Yeah.
If I had to revise it now, I think I go Clippers Bucks to be honest with you. And you had Bucks and Lakers, correct?
Yeah, I'm going to keep it the same until I I just with the Lakers, I don't think we've seen the real Lakers. I just don't. I still don't think
I don't
we've
know,
seen the
man.
real LeBron. Like I just don't.
I'm concerned about that team.
Yeah, I am a little bit, but at the same time, it's like playoff. I don't know. I'm just waiting to see playoff LeBron. If they get playoff LeBron, they're fine. So until then, I'm gonna keep it the same. Um, I'm gonna keep it the same until after the first round.
All right.
I
We
think
shall
Portland
see.
is good for them. I think having to face off Portland. I mean,
Really?
obviously Memphis could obviously win that game, but
I hear
or
that.
they would have to win 2 in a row. But I think Portland is good for them because it'll get them going.
Okay. Well, we're gonna find out, and I think that's a series that can quietly go 6 or 7 because I don't
Yeah,
know who stops Damian Lillard on that team, or CJ McCollum for that matter.
yeah. Yeah.
Because that they're oh my god, good luck with that high screen and roll.
But you know what? Who's
Because
saying that Portland's gonna beat the Lakers? I just don't know how you can really say that because so much has to happen for Portland's defense is trash, and their offense, their
sure,
rebounding is trash. They cannot defend and they cannot rebound. And the one thing with the Lakers, they can sure as hell rebound, and their offense is based on getting open threes, right? Well, Portland doesn't defend the three, and they don't rebound. If you can't defend the three and you can't rebound against the Lakers, you're getting swept.
but statistically, the Lakers and I've seen this, they're the worst offense in the bubble, and that's why Frank Vogel kept his starters
Well,
in
then
so
it's a
long
great
against the
time to play the
Nuggets.
worst defense in the bubble. I
Sure,
mean,
but you're
it's
also
that
playing
simple.
probably the best offense, if not the at least the hottest player other than Devin Booker right now in Damian Lillard. So it's going to be an
Yeah,
interesting
but
matchup.
the reason why I say it's good for the Lakers is because when you're playing the worst defense and a defense that doesn't guard the three, if you're getting open threes and you start to hit them, that will give them momentum going into the next series against Houston. So,
Joke's on
or
them. They're not playing the Nuggets, so they can't hit all those threes. I mean, everybody seems to hit every three against the Nuggets. Could be open,
everyone seems
contested,
to hit every three against the Portland Trailblazers, and it's because they should. They're
and then
all
they come
open.
right back, and Damian comes off that
Right.
screen, and then he knocks it
He
down
doesn't
right in
even
your
need a
face.
screen anymore. He just pulls it
For
from
the
half
love of
court.
God, LA, my only advice: do not play drop coverage against Damian. If your big is not in Damian's grill or you're not blitzing him, he's just gonna knock down every three.
Yeah.
At
We
least more
also
likely.
didn't see JR play. I think he's gonna play in the playoffs.
Well, I'm not putting my stock in a J.R. Smith in the playoffs. Okay, so I'm there. That does not make me more confident in the LA Lakers to win. So that actually makes me less confident if he's going to play, because you just never know what you're going to get from Jr. You know, soup can getting thrown at somebody's head, or him missing 5 threes in a row. I don't know, but lastly, before we go, training camp, Broncos training camp starts today. Woo! Any excitement there?
No.
Anything you wanna see? Drew Lock, Jerry Judy score 15 touchdowns, be training camp superstar like Cody Latimer once was.
No, I've never been one of those training camp guys. It's more realistically, it's more for the guys at the bottom trying to make the team, especially with no preseason games. So good luck to those guys.
It's gonna be interesting what the roster is gonna look like, and I'm really curious to see who gets that first handoff today for I almost said the Denver Nuggets, for the Denver Nuggets and the Denver Broncos. Who's gonna get the first handoff?
I'll
I
wait
know
to
who it should be,
I'll
but
yeah, it should be Melvin Gordon.
okay. Well,
I'll wait
now we're gonna
till
end this.
I'll wait
Don't
till
get
game
you started.
one to see that fight. But
Yeah.
no, Melvin Gordon's a better running back. I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
Better Melvin Gordon's a better running back.
That'll be a debate for Tuesday. That'll do it for us here on the podcast. We thank you guys for listening. Hopefully, you got a kick out of it as we did as well. That's going to do it for us, though, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening later on in the podcast via Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We appreciate you. For Brandon Stoll, I'm Stephen Priest Jr. This has been the Behind the Glass Sports Podcast. We'll catch you guys next time.